You say Benjamin Netanyahu has no smoking gun.
He has no smoking gun whatsoever. As a matter of fact, his presentation yesterday confirmed that Iran closed down the active nuclear weapons program in 2003. They had some remaining technology activities that were going on since then. But de facto, they closed down the program in 2003. Then we need the restrictions on them anyhow. And they have agreed to the most intrusive inspection regime of any country in the world. And that inspection regime works. So I think the presentation...
Sorry, I was saying the point of people who oppose the deal say there are sunset clauses. In other words, that they just have to abide by the terms for a few years, and after that, they've kept all their research, they've gotten all the money from the lifting of the sanctions, and they'll get right back on track. That's not something that concerns you?
No, because, I mean, they have signed up to the NPT treaty. They have signed up to the so-called additional protocol of the IAEA. So these things will apply forever. So it's not that there are some very intrusive regimes that is just for 10 years or something like that. But the commitment in the agreement is forever for Iran. And that is very much in the interest of Europe and the world to preserve that and not to unravel it as Prime Minister Netanyahu wants.
Do you think Donald Trump is going to walk away from the deal?
I fear so, but we'll see. We've had both French President Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel there trying to convince him, and practically the entire rest of the world wants to preserve this agreement because it is a contribution to stability and peace. We don't want more confrontation, not further wars in the Middle East. But he has a rhetoric from his campaign.
So I know you're a supporter of the deal. What is your biggest concern if the deal collapses and the U.S. walks away?
That we go into a vicious circle of confrontation in the region. I think it will play into the hands of the hardliners in Tehran. They will say we can't trust the Americans. We are heading for confrontation, and they will take measures accordingly. We heard the Prime Minister of Israel with a fairly warlike rhetoric, and they are taking active actions as well. And we don't know what the American policy is going to be. So we head for a region of more confrontation and possible further wars, and that should be avoided.
You mentioned Emmanuel Macron. He was in Washington. He got the big state dinner, and there was kind of a bit of a bromance going on between the two. You saw the images, the hugs and the kisses. He proposed a supplemental component to the existing deal. I imagine this was his way, his strategy to try to get Donald Trump to stay in the deal by getting a few more elements, you know, compromises or elements to the deal that he feels would make it more palatable. What are the chances that will happen?
Well, I think if we preserve the nuclear deal with Iran, we are on speaking terms with Tehran. And we have quite a number of issues that we need to discuss with Iran. I mean, the regional stability issues, be that the situation in Syria, be that the situation in Yemen, be that something else. We have all of the interest to engage, be that the human rights issue, be that the other proliferation issues. And that is essentially the European strategy. Keep the dialogue going with Iran to address all of the other issues that we need to address with the Iranians, with the Israelis, with the Syrians, with the Saudis in this region.
The Europeans are also doing quite a bit of business with Iran. I mean, the minute that deal was signed, you had French car makers, other European countries all going in there. There's a market there for them.
Well, it's a market, but it's not been working very well because, and here the Iranians have a point, the Americans have been trying to block the development of economic contacts with Iran, which I think is regrettable. We have an interest in contributing to the stabilization or the normalization and the reform of the Iranian economy and the Iranian society and opening it up into the world. And European also economic contacts are a contribution to this. And this is, as a matter of fact, something that also the United States have committed itself to in the nuclear deal.
Yes, and many people in Europe agree with you, certainly the top officials. But if you look at how Iran is utilizing its power, its influence, and its money in the region, it is obviously supporting the regime of Bashar al-Assad and Hezbollah and waging a proxy war in Syria that is extremely, extremely destructive. So what is,
true.
I mean, it is, that's what it's doing. So what is the influence of Europe here when it comes to that, when it comes to trying to change some of that behavior?
All of those particular activities that you mentioned have been going on for quite some time, well prior to the Iran nuclear deal. I mean, the Syria conflict started in 2011. The situation in Lebanon has been there for a very long time. So all of these regional issues, they are not, or Iranian position on them, they are not a consequence of the Iran nuclear deal. But we have an interest in engaging with Iran on constructive diplomacy to address these particular issues, as we have an interest in engaging with the Saudis on some of them, Yemen, for example, engaging with the Russians on Syria. They are not a product of the nuclear deal, but the nuclear deal makes it possible for us to talk to Tehran about these issues as well.
Carl Bildt, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate your perspective.